Welcome to English 2, week of February 22nd, 2021. We have one graded assignment this week, and that is the 3.06 quiz for Cry the Beloved Country. So I'm going to spend a few minutes in this recording just reviewing what you need to know for that quiz. For English 2, I'm Mrs. Cager. So our agenda for this recording, I'm just briefly going to go over what's on your plan for this week in English 2. If you need some more details about this week, you'll want to watch the weekly update video that was sent out in your email. I've got a couple of reminders for you, and then we'll spend the bulk of our time in the 306 review. So here's our course plan for this week. You'll see that you've got 4 course lessons to work through, all having to do with your wonderful novel, Cry the Beloved Country. I believe by Thursday, you're up to like chapter 17 or through 17, which is about halfway through the book by Thursday. You have one quiz assigned on Tuesday, and that's what this recording is going to cover. Like I said in my weekly, if you are totally swamped and overwhelmed because of personal stuff or because your house flooded or froze or whatever, I would love for you to focus most of your time just on your reading, just with your book. If you can get into the course lessons, they're great, they're wonderful, but nothing takes place of just reading. So read first. If you have time to go back and go through the lessons, then of course you can do that as time permits. Formative 2 was canceled last week because of all winter storm stuff. So it was canceled, not rescheduled, just canceled. That means we had no graded work for last week. So don't worry about if you missed out last week, don't worry about trying to go backwards. There was nothing graded last week, so don't worry about it. Coming up on spring break, we have the 3.14 literary analysis. So this is an essay, it's over your book. So when we're finished reading Cry the Beloved Country, you're going to be writing a literary analysis over the novel. So I strongly recommend that you go ahead and go look at that 3.14 assignment, look at the prompts and the directions now so that you can be taking notes and you kind of have in your mind what you're looking for and what to annotate as you're reading through the novel. So what is on the 3.06 quiz for Tuesday? It is a 6-question quiz, and it's going to focus on Cry the Beloved Country chapters 1 through 17, which is book 1, and it's about 150 pages worth of reading. So it's quite a bit to cover. So if you haven't started reading, you want to get going. We're about 156 pages in by the end of the day, Tuesday. It's going to cover things like author's point of view, the cultural experiences and historical events in the novel, which we will cover more in depth on Tuesday in CC. The influence of Johannesburg on the characters, and then of course just understanding of the plot so far. So for author's point of view, how does Patten view South African people and society? So Alan Patten is the author. So the question is asking, how does the author view the people of South Africa and their society? And really, Patten shows how the people of South Africa can work to overcome problems by working together. For example, Simangu helps Khumalo when he first comes to Johannesburg. He also shows us that Johannesburg is a dangerous city, right? It's very corrupt. It's full of all kinds of danger and corruption. For example, look at what happens with Gertrude and Absalom. Patten also depicts the inequality and the injustice that Black South Africans face during this time. For example, the housing situation in Chapter 9, with Shantytown, and bus prices in Chapter 8. So if some of this sounds like you don't understand at all what's happening, I think after Tuesday's CC, we'll cover this stuff a little bit more in depth. We'll talk about some of the background and the context. I think it'll help clear it up for you. So what are the cultural experiences of South Africans in the late 1940s? Again, this is something we'll be talking about quite a bit in CC on Tuesday. But some important things to know, there's a lot of crime in South Africa during this time. Khumalo is robbed when he first arrives in Johannesburg, and Absalom and Gertrude become involved in criminal activity very quickly after they move to Johannesburg. Black South Africans must deal with poverty, crime, unjust laws, and racism. The shantytown housing crisis is a big part of that, and the bus boycott from unfair bus prices. I believe that's chapters 8 and 9 again. So what historical events influence Cry the Beloved Country? Well, in South Africa, at this time, they were a segregated country. So Black South Africans faced discriminatory laws and practices that relegated them to shanty towns and it limited their job opportunities. So this reality is revealed in Patton's description of the shanty towns of Johannesburg and the prolific poverty that we see in Johannesburg in the 40s. Crime was also rampant in Johannesburg in the 1940s, and this is reflected in the novel. Specifically, we see this when Khumalo is robbed as soon as he arrives in the city. So how does Johannesburg, the city, impact the characters in the novel? So we have to think about the things that these characters experience in this city and what kind of impact does it have on them. So, for example, Khumalo's experiences of being robbed make him realize just how naive he's been in his view of Johannesburg prior to arriving, so before he got there. And then he struggles to navigate the complex issues that people face in the city. Absalom, for instance, then falls in with the wrong crowd in Johannesburg, and he really loses his way there and makes some really poor choices. Gertrude as well turns to crime after moving to Johannesburg in order to survive by selling illegal liquor and prostituting herself. So we see how the setting, being in this city, really impacts and kind of drives the direction of the characters in the novel. And I've just given you these three very specific examples of how Johannesburg has impacted the characters and therefore impacts the plot of the entire novel. You'll want to be familiar with the following characters. Of course, Khumalo. How does Khumalo feel about his brother, John, and John's actions at prison? And how does he feel about his sister, Gertrude, and her actions? And then Sumangu, how does he help Khumalo? And why is he cruel to Absalom's girlfriend? So you want to look at those questions, make sure you're familiar with those characters, and you can answer those questions before moving on to your 3.06 quiz. And then some important plot points you'll want to be able to answer. Why does Khumalo get a lawyer for Absalom? You need to know that. Why does Khumalo return to talk to Absalom's girlfriend? And why does Absalom kill Arthur Jarvis? So if you don't know the answer to those questions, go back, look at your reading, go back in the lessons, make sure you understand these plot points before moving on to your quiz. All right, as always, if you've got any questions, feel free to email me or come to office hours. Again, the 3.06 quiz is covering a pretty big chunk of text. It's over the entire book 1, which is, looks like 157 pages. So a good chunk of reading. Always remember that stuff is due on a due date, but it stays open. So I would really encourage you. I know last week was crazy for most people. If you are not caught up to the reading, if you haven't gotten through chapter 17, don't take the quiz yet. Wait and take the quiz when you finished the 17th chapter. Just because I know it's due on Tuesday, but if you haven't read far enough, you're not going to do well on that quiz. You're going to have to retake it. So if you have to wait until Thursday or Friday to catch up on your reading, it's perfectly fine. We don't have any other graded work this week, just the one quiz. So however long you need to take to make sure that you're where you need to be in the text before you take that quiz, that's what I want you to do. Again, some of the questions you have will probably be answered after our Tuesday CC. So if at all possible, you want to make sure you're in Class Connect on Tuesday, as we'll kind of cover a lot of the background and a lot of the context for the text here. I hope you guys are doing well. I hope to see you in class on Tuesday. Have a great week.